Giant trevally, emperors, and bonefish, some of my favorite species that I've only ever dreamed of catching from watching way too many fishing films. To make my dreams reality, my brother and I traveled to Aitutaki, a beautiful, almost atoll in the southern Pacific. This trip would be an incredible introduction to fishing the tropics and many learning experiences. We start off our journey on a 6-hour flight from California to Honolulu. Next, a 6-hour layover before another 6-hour flight to Rarotonga that lands in the evening. Unfortunately, the nearby accommodation is fully booked, so we rough it out on the benches overnight and hop on the plane around noon for a short hour flight to Aitutaki. 32 uncomfortable hours later, we are finally here. After dropping off our luggage, we waste no time and hit a lagoon spot in the north recommended by our hosts. As I cast around the zone, I get some follows from casts near the coral structure, so I focus my efforts around these. Soon I have my first fish of the trip after a small blow-up, a blacktail snapper. As we fish through the sunset, another blacktail snapper. On the last few casts, it's an emperor. This is probably a yellowtail emperor. I'm thrilled to check off one of the goals of this trip, especially so quickly. We spend the next few days exploring areas that look promising on maps, but have nothing to show for our efforts. We spot a monster bonefish cruising the shallows near a sandy channel that has revisiting multiple times, but we are not rewarded for our persistence there. During this time, the wind picks up and an on and off rain drenches us during many of our sessions. We didn't bring any cold weather gear, seeing the climate was consistently warm, and quickly realized this was a mistake. The temperature drops much more than we expect, and we are shivering at the end of the sessions, soaking in the rain. Finally, a break in the weather arrives, and we hop onto our first boat session looking for GT and bonefish. We launch from the east side of the main island and fish all around the south of the main lagoon, in deep water with massive coral heads and also the shallow flats with scattered structure. Early on in the session, my brother has the first shot at a GT, but his terminal knot slips halfway through the fight. A few more hours of casting and searching. You can see the flash of the GT as it swims away. Just a heads up, the next two fights are shaky due to a loose mount. I did my best to make them watchable. 10 minutes later,
Two, cast. No, that's bigger. It's underneath it, you see it? Yeah.
Right here, a third GT checks out my brother's lure. The GT is hooked on its side, no wonder why it feels heavier than it looks.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
It's almost a surreal experience, finally catching a GT. A healthy release is a cherry on top. Sick teeth marks on the popper. The next few days, we continued to fish new zones while battling the increasing wind and rain. On recommendation, we wade out onto the reef edge and try a passage on the east side. I quickly realized the reef is incredibly slippery with only a few sections of good footing. Fish a small sinking stick bait in the ripping current, and near sunset,
Huge hit.
I continue to cast in the hopes he comes back, and 10 minutes later. This is the last of the shaky footage.
Probably those little red snappers. Yeah. Holy crap. Oh, I don't know if that's not the ball. Holy cow. Wait, got a turn? Oh. Please stop. Okay. Backhand. Gonna walk that way a little bit. Can you spot the spot for me? I can't tell if it's good footing or not. Just walk to my left. Oh, crap. That was big. Oh, probably 50 plus. Oh, that's big.
I'm back with tighter drag the next day, but not as much as I would like due to the slippery reef.
Alright, I think it's time to switch to a plastic. Yeah. Oh, why would he set it?
That was an intense fight, getting dragged forward on the initial hit and into the biggest bend I've ever experienced on the Accura. When the tide drops too low to fish the reef edge, we wade back to shore and swap to light tackle. We spooked a bunch of small fish wading through the lagoon earlier, so we blind cast around the zone to see if anyone is willing to eat. That's probably a brassy trevally. And a fin-striped goatfish. I run into a porcupine fish in less than a foot of water. The next day it's raining, but we tried the passage anyway without any action. We swapped to light tackle and tried a nearby sandy channel after seeing good current flowing through it. I cast near the rocky structure in the channel. The structure in the channel turns out to be a haven for little snappers. Another new species, a honeycomb grouper. Having a hot bite and consistent catch like this lifts our spirit even if the fish are small. We enjoyed the much needed respite from the wind thanks to a tree line near the channel. Back at the passage, the wind is blowing even harder. No action yet again. As usual, we swapped to the light tackle and tried a nearby lagoon. Casting near the big rocks is the ticket here. The wind is blowing especially hard today, and I get many wind knots. Still, catching a few fish makes it worth it. It's pretty exciting seeing the snappers shoot out of the rocks and hit topwater lures. I get many aggressive follows and hits like this.
Holy.
This isn't a parrotfish, it's a surge wrasse. Chunky and colorful, but not much fight. We decide to move on from the GT passage and try the reef edge along the north. The water was especially cold in this zone.
Let's go. What's up? Holy.
The heavy tackle off the edge doesn't produce, so I trek back to the car and switch to the light setup. I fish a small plastic in the lagoon and another surge wrasse. Of course, there are more blacktail snappers. Back on the edge with the light tackle. Another wrasse. And finally a new species, a stocky hawkfish. We try a new zone in the northwest with a much further and deeper wade out. We are shivering as we fish as the rain and wind persists. The first hit comes off unfortunately, but the next hit there's a long stretch of shallow reef to fight through in this zone, and I feel the fish reef me for a few seconds before it luckily comes out. I make a mental note here to go extra hard on future hookups to prevent reefings. A huge head shake and what looks like a snapper escapes. The rain really starts coming down. 15 minutes later, a new species, a double-spotted queenfish. They must have been schooled up as you can see my brother hooked up on a queenfish in the background. I get a nice hit. Then I'm reefed. As I try to change the line angle to free the fish, thankfully my setup is okay. It ends up being only a few scrapes where the reef cut through my clothes. I'm glad I was wearing full sun protection. It was only a matter of time with how treacherous the reef is. 40 minutes later, it was a pretty solid hit, so I tried my best to keep its head out of the reef. Despite my efforts, halfway through the shallow reef, I feel the fish get stuck. Instead of trying to yank it free, I let the line slide. After 30 seconds, I feel the familiar tail beats of a fish. It looks similar to the snapper that shook itself free earlier. It's a new species, a one-spot snapper, about 5 pounds on the grid. One more bite to end the session. But I drop it in the breakers. I briefly return to the GT passage to check if they're around, but no luck. We wade back out to the far edge again, seeing how productive it was yesterday. Another new species, a peacock grouper. "20 minutes later. I'm speechless, reefed in less than 2 seconds. Probably a GT. After a fresh swim bait and a spool change. One of the hardest non-GT pulls. It's a chunky yellowtail emperor, about 6 pounds. This one is super dark due to their color changing abilities. "30 minutes later. Another one-spot snapper. These snappers are no joke with their head shakes. 40 minutes later, another peacock grouper. This is one of the reasons we're standing far back, even if it's shallow. I get my leer back, and that's it for this session.
Holy cow.
I mentioned earlier the wade was pretty deep. This is how the wade looked after fishing through the dropping tide. Back at the same zone for a third time. I'm fishing a popper for a little variety. In the shallows, it looks like some trevally species. Barely missed my face. Sketchy. 30 minutes later, can't complain about a bite on the bottom. Another peacock grouper. I step in a small hidden hole here. Luckily it wasn't too deep. Another thing to watch out for while on the reef. I swap to a small jig. Looks like a decent houndfish. I'm a little disappointed after it jumps its way free because I've yet to land one. At this point, the wind hasn't slowed at all, but the sun is finally out after many days of rain. We decide to try another boat session in the lagoon for GT and hopefully bonefish this time. Unfortunately, the wind picks up even more and I get absolutely no action for the entire session. At least the views are beautiful. Just look how absurdly turquoise the lagoon is today. At sunset, we return to the harbor for a quick session. I start to hear the sounds of bait getting smashed. And we're on. Just one catch, but a new species, a juvenile big-eyed trevally. In the last few days of our stay, our host offers to take us outside of the lagoon on his personal boat. We'd almost given up on doing this due to bad timing with charters and poor weather. What a legend. We head out in the late morning through the main passage and cruise along the reef casting towards the breakers. Eventually, I get super lucky here as the GT charges towards me, deeper into the channel instead of away into the shallow reef.
Over the ledge.
thrilled to finally land another GT.
There we go. Alright.
The fight was much easier because it wasn't hooked on its side.
Yeah. Nice one. Thank you. These are barbless, so they should come out.
Oh, okay. Wow. It never came out?
No. There we go. All right.
10 minutes later. Unfortunate. The popper is absolutely battle scarred now. We quickly pivot after the captain spots frigatebird's diving at bait. Captain wants mahi for the dinner table, and I'd love to get one on top water. It's kind of hard to see, but a mahi goes airborne after eating the popper.
Got it. Got it.
The popper comes loose after a big jump, and we don't get another chance.
Came off.
On the way back in, we stop to drop jigs.
Jig one's over here.
The fish finder is out of commission, so we drop without any marks.
And then we'll move further down.
Oh, yep. Yep.
We are about 100 meters deep. Surprisingly, it turns out to be a bluefin trevally down deep.
That's a bluefin.
Hey,
It's a bluefin. I think you can eat this guy, right?
It was only a few pounds, perfect for the captain's dinner table.
it was down that thing?
Yeah.
At the next spot, 15 cranks off the bottom.
Something decent.
It's another bluefin trevally.
Yeah.
We stop by the reef edge for a few more casts before calling it a day. The next day, we start off casting at a few fads, but no luck. The GTs would be more fired up this morning, but I would get utterly defeated. If you listen carefully, you can hear the explosiveness of the next hit, despite it being at the end of a cast.
Oh! Did you see that?
Yeah.
Oh!
It's still chasing it.
Come on, eat it! Eat it! Eat it!
Seeing the dark shapes slicing through the surface and chasing the popper was definitely a highlight. 10 minutes later,
Yep!
look at all the braid recoiling back towards me. That was the fastest I've ever been broken off in less than a second. This is when I realized we were probably too close to the reef. That popper would have made a sick decoration. It looks super gnarly with all those GT teeth marks.
I really like that popper.
20 minutes later,
Oh! 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 I saw it go sideways right into the coral. Dang! Yep, straight cut off.
this GT was potentially landable, but my drag was too loose, probably from the spool swap I just did. Always check your drag. This final hit is in quotation marks. As you can see, the line snaps almost instantly with little pressure.
Oh, just missed it. Right on the side.
Shortly after, we spot the popper floating by.
Got it.
The leader has a weird spiral pattern 3 inches long starting from the break. We're guessing the leader wrapped on its tail scutes or it had bit the leader to make that weird pattern and break under low pressure. Here I'm checking for teeth marks on the popper, and it still looks brand new, so most likely the GT wasn't on the leer. I return solo to the productive land-based reef edge. There's a little bit more swell today. It wiggles itself free, but it's another new species, a small spotted pompano. I'm not sure how I managed to get a hook on a 5-inch swim bait, but I'm not complaining. I'm not sure what happens here, but I think the wind causes the line to get caught under this bowl. You can see all the small reef fish scattering as it comes into the channel. It's also followed by its entire school. That's pretty neat.
Whole pack of that.
Check out the water funneling out of this small passage. On the final day, we head out with our host again for a quick session, but don't get any action. To cap off our trip, we stopped by a special spot in the lagoon where you can swim with GTs. This was an incredible sight to behold, as most of the GTs were quite large. Overall, it was an awesome trip despite the unfortunate weather and difficult fishing. I'm thrilled to have finally caught my first ever Emperors and GTs. We learned a lot about fishing on the reef and targeting tropical species. Aitutaki is also known for their massive bonefish, which we didn't get a shot at, so that's definitely on the list for next time. I'm hoping to return during the summer season for better weather and fishing. I'll quickly mention the setups I use for anyone curious. The rods are all Zenaq and the reels are Daiwa. The light setup is a Sonio 93M with an Exist 5000. For heavier short casting, an Accura 100H and Saltiga 8 or 10K. For heavy bow casting, a Tobizo 84 100G and Saltiga 10K. And finally for jigging, an Ikari 6.4 5.5 power and Saltiga 6K. Thank you for watching and sticking around if you made it to the end. Tight lines.